With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Hey, this is James O'Neill. Russian President Vladimir Putin and U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff held nearly 5 hours of Kremlin talks on a potential Ukraine peace settlement, including revisions to a leaked 28-point U.S. draft plan. Russian aide Yuri Ushakov said Washington presented 4 additional documents addressing major sticking points: territorial concessions, security guarantees, NATO status, and limits on Ukraine's military. Discussions follow mounting Ukrainian battlefield losses and corruption scandals around Zelensky's circle. Before Moscow, Witkoff met Ukrainian officials in Florida for tough negotiations reportedly focused on territory. Although Zelensky publicly rejects concessions, talks now center on frontline setbacks and growing pressure from the U.S. and EU. Ahead of negotiations with U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner, Russian President Vladimir Putin issued stark warnings to Europe, claiming Russia is peaceful but fully prepared for a rapid, overwhelming conflict if provoked. He asserted that a war launched by Europe would leave nobody to negotiate with, contrasting Europe with the surgical precision he claims Russia uses in Ukraine. Putin blamed European and NATO members for obstructing peace efforts and preventing the U.S. from finalizing a settlement. Kremlin officials said the nearly 5-hour Moscow talks were constructive but yielded no breakthrough, noting that some proposals remain unacceptable. No follow-up meeting with President Trump was scheduled, though future phone discussions are planned. Reuters reports that U.S. President Donald Trump issued Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro a 1-week ultimatum to flee the country, following expanding U.S. military pressure and lethal strikes on boats accused of drug smuggling. During a November 21st call, President Trump rejected most of Maduro's conditions for leaving, including amnesty from U.S. sanctions, dismissal of his ICC case, and lifting sanctions on over 100 Venezuelan officials. Maduro proposed a transitional government led by Vice President Delcy Rodriguez until elections. After the deadline expired, President Trump declared Venezuela's airspace closed. Washington calls Maduro a cartel-linked illegitimate ruler. Caracas claims the U.S. seeks regime change to seize resources. Former Ukrainian Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba, who left office in 2024 under unclear circumstances, has reemerged, alleging President Volodymyr Zelensky removed him because polling showed Kuleba slightly more popular. In an interview with La Repubblica, he said he predicted disaster after a survey showed him 1 point ahead of Zelensky. Kuleba, known for securing foreign weapons and maintaining a traditional diplomatic style, argued Ukrainians want a democratic reset and elections would occur immediately after a ceasefire. While warning Ukraine's battlefield situation is worsening and difficult decisions loom, he said a rushed bad peace deal could destabilize the nation. Kuleba also welcomed ongoing anti-corruption investigations and warned NATO must prepare for potential war with Russia. Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Conservative leader Kemi Badenoch faced off in a charged PMQ session.
If all of this is true, why did he take the whip away from the people who are asking for it? Let's remind the Chancellor, exactly a year ago today, on the 3rd of December 2024, the Chancellor said, "We will never have to repeat a budget like this one." If only. He may have taken the whip away, but the rebels had the last laugh. The Prime Minister has lost. He can't run his own party. He can't, let alone the country, Mr. Speaker. Let me quote what the hard-left former Shadow Chancellor said. He said, "We've won." He's right, isn't he?
Prime Minister, Speaker, I've said repeatedly that bringing down child poverty is a moral mission, a political mission, and a personal mission. They drove hundreds of thousands of children into poverty who will pay the price for the rest of their lives for their failure.
This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
There is a problem with medicine, and we can explain what it is by looking back to the discovery of penicillin. Penicillin, it turns out, was not just an accidental finding. Alexander Fleming discovered that mold he found in a culture dish was killing bacteria. But it took over 10 years before a team at Oxford University were able to isolate the active ingredient. They produced small quantities for preclinical and clinical trials, helping prove the compound was safe and could beat infection. However, they couldn't produce it at scale. In 1941, Andrew Jackson Moyer of the US Department of Agriculture, the forerunner to the FDA, suggested changes to the manufacturing process, enabling mass production. It turns out medicines are not invented when someone discovers a new molecular entity. They are the product of key stakeholders working together collaboratively. Until medicine can be manufactured at scale, it may as well not exist. And in 2025, this is a problem. In the 1980s, pharmaceutical companies began outsourcing production. Suddenly the system was significantly less integrated. Someone with a new discovery today will find themselves disconnected from the rest of the development and manufacturing process. Companies that develop medicine are still happy to work with big established pharma companies, but the modern day Flemings are cut out of the system. The result is far fewer new medicines coming to market. We want to fix this by ensuring the pharma industry builds a more integrated supply chain. We also believe that doctors' expertise administering medicine should be included at the beginning of the process. We know that doctors on the front line have insights about how to repurpose medicine. Doctors should be able to report their findings so that the necessary testing can be completed and they can share their results worldwide. Learn more here and help us take medicines back to the future.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome to our brand new program. It's called The Big Issue. Today we're looking at COVID, the aftermath. We are not by any measure over the disaster of COVID, are we? Although our governments have tried to bury the crimes, if not the hatchet. Many of these crimes have been discussed over the past 5 years. Some we missed through the fog of war, the barrage of propaganda from both sides, independent media and government media, and unrelenting censorship on a scale never before seen. This was an incredibly well-organised assault by government on their citizens, supported by many corrupt enablers and foot soldiers who received benefits they will not see again until the next pandemic. The perpetrators failed in some respects. They failed to introduce vaccine passports, and the shot and its boosters have been rejected. But not by all. There are some that still believe you've got to have that COVID booster. However, no one has been punished for any criminal behaviour or negligence. Quite the opposite. They've also learned just how far they can push populations to submit to authoritarian controls and how to further bolster their misinformation and disinformation networks on social media, mainstream media, and now alternative or independent media. Today we've got a conga line of panellists. We're going to talk to our panel about some of the lessons they have learned and how we might weather the current and next assault. Perhaps another pandemic won't be necessary. It is sad, isn't it? Such is our apathy. Dr. Ursula Edgington, she's an educationalist and writer. She's our first guest for the show. Ursula, thanks for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Mike. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, I heard so much about you, and I love your writings. Some of them we can't really talk about at the moment because I wish to remain alive. But yeah, but time is a great way of evening things out, doesn't it?
I believe in karma. Yeah.
Tell me at this particular moment in time. Tell us your feelings on the whole thing, how it's been unravelling, and I would dare say there's a lot more to unravel.
Yes, definitely. Well, as you probably know, I could speak to you for days about this, and especially what's come to light in the last few months. But I think, I'm an optimist at heart, and I firmly believe that the lessons that we are still learning 5 years after this horrendous experience just builds us stronger and a more firm foundation. So some of us have learned who we can and cannot trust, and some of us have learned the strategies of how to overcome the censorship and the propaganda more effectively. And yeah, every day people are waking up, as it were, and learning more, including me. Yeah, there's some shocking things to learn, and it is a very dark, depressing environment at times. But you just get up and dust yourself down and keep fighting. That's all. There's no other alternative, really, is there, Mike? Just got to keep going.
There's not, and it's a truly it's a very ugly world out there. I mean, what we see and what the machinations behind the scenes, and you've seen it, are quite disturbing.
Yep.
And at times, it's very hard to work out who's telling the truth and who's not.
Yep.
And even then, you can get that wrong. It's a very scary thing. But universities, how are they controlling the narrative? Because here we are. On one hand, we're talking about media, social media, or independent media, alt media, and mainstream media. And at times there's a little distinction, except we know with mainstream media, we know who's paying them. On the other hand, we don't know who's paying a lot of the independent media or the alt media. But when you get to universities, you normally think you have a titch of honesty, not a whole lot, but a titch of honesty. How have the universities, how have they been controlling the narrative?
Yes, absolutely. So it's a very similar situation. There's people that were rolled out, as we know, under the role of expert in their particular discipline. And it's not been transparent for many, many years, actually. And I was in that naive camp about 10 years ago when I myself was forced out of academia because of some things that I had discovered. And yeah, it's a case of looking very carefully. I mean, it's not hidden. It is hidden in plain sight, as it were, but it's very difficult sometimes to navigate. And this is one of the things that I'm engaged with at the moment is teaching. With my adult teaching, I run workshops where I help people to navigate this critical thinking skill, environment. What do you actually have to do practically to get beyond that surface knowledge and find out, for instance, who has paid for a particular piece of research, and things like suppression clauses. Some people, even in academia itself, I've had lots of conversations with academics, well established senior academics, who still today do not understand fully what a suppression clause is in their research grant award, in their contract, because they don't see the contracts. It's an administrative bureaucratic burden that they don't get involved with, generally speaking. So they don't know what that means until it's crunch time and they go to publish research outputs which are not in line with the narrative, and at that point they get censored.
Which is basically just hiding the truth, and you wonder why they have done all that research to get to the stage where nobody will know the actual truth. Tell me this: how do you navigate through this maze of deceit? How do you work out which is controlled opposition, or is that just something you have to just take on the chin a bit? Because it is very hard. I mean, we've all been bitten by
Yeah.
something that we think is going to be something in our life. I mean, whether you're at school, university, in the business area, whether you're in the media, whatever.
Yeah.
There are always those people out there, but unfortunately it gets a bit nastier when the stakes are very, very high. So how do we work out which is controlled opposition, or how do we separate the BS from reality?
Yeah, yeah. Well, that cliche, follow the money, I think is the best piece of advice anybody can ever take. Uh,
Hmm.
and so, for instance, I'll give you a recent example. Looking at a university in China, for instance, which has been the subject of some investigations recently. we can see that that particular university was set up by effectively a pharmaceutical company, and that a division of that university, which basically subsidizes the other sectors of the university, is paid for by the pharmaceutical industry. And so it makes perfect sense that they would, going back to the suppression clause and similar kinds of clauses in their contracts with that funding, it makes perfect sense that the outputs from that university will only be in line with what the pharmaceutical industry wants them to publish. And so at that point, the peer-reviewed literature is meaningless. And that's what we've learned, isn't it, over the last 5 years, as it's safe and effective, or the best tool in the toolbox in terms of the poison that they use here in New Zealand. Whatever the commercial narrative is, that's what the university will push out over and over again, no matter what. And if you're a certain academic, like I was, who questions that and who, does have an element of ethics and integrity and perhaps a little bit of naivety, doesn't quite believe that, these academic institutions are that corrupt and that captured. And if you push too much, then you get forced out, and you get forced out with a gagging clause that prevents you from discussing any of the details. And so the cycle continues over and over again, over decades.
Tell us about how some of the examples on how the narrative was controlled not only by government. We always talk about government media being its voice box for sprouting the narrative, but there were the universities. I mean, they were not going to upset anybody. Their sponsors were always revered, and I understand a little bit to a point, because they need the money. I mean, they can't just stay open through goodwill. So I understand there's some sort of commerciality in this, but at the same time, if you are doing if you are studying and you are going to push out the truth, push out new developments, push out things that will save society, then you have a responsibility then to tell the truth. Tell us some of the examples, if you wouldn't mind, on how universities insisted that these narratives were followed, and that if you didn't follow these narratives, then off with the head.
Yes, definitely. Well, the silencing that happened was very intense. And, me speaking from my personal experience, although I wasn't affiliated to an institution already, that had gone pear-shaped by the time the COVID thing had begun. Even my LinkedIn profile, I wasn't allowed by the community standards at the time to post even an article from the British Medical Journal, one of, if not the most prominent peer-reviewed academic medical journal in the world, that happened to be questioning the, safe and effective. And that was one thing that cut me off from my academic peers. The networks and connections that I'd made. I was late to academia anyway. I spent many years in the commercial world, but the latter years of my career where I was in an academic environment, all of those connections are lost, and it's a tragedy, really, and it's a loss to academia that the lack of free speech, has been just totally overwhelming. Just nothing can be questioned at all, other than the current thing. So the thing that I was going back to your question about how the practical ways, there's definitely an element of intellectual property theft and the value of intellectual property in universities. And so one way that works, and I've written about this, is I've talked to you about before, the case of Angus Dalgleish, who is famous, in our community perhaps for being somebody who has been in academia and spoken out. But, it's problematic, the fact that he didn't speak out when he perhaps could have. And in fact, he was pro the intervention at a crucial time when the children should have been protected and weren't. So when you investigate a little bit, follow the money. You can easily go to Companies House and find out which companies these people are shareholders in, and who is the person or the entity that is in control. And, if they're involved in a pharmaceutical company that is profitable, especially if they've got overseas shareholders, China and America, etc., instantly that rings alarm bells, doesn't it, Mike? You've got to start digging a little bit deeper, and then it just gets worse normally from then on. So
It does. We, I mean, we can't. I can't, and I won't say much about it at the moment. But if we had followed other direction from people who are insisting we do move in another direction, and as I said, we didn't. I doubt whether TNT would have closed. That's just and I think that there were many things, and we look at, for example, X. We have the great honour of being on level, I think it's tier 1. Tier 1 is it's off with your head, which is the same as tier 1. So they openly say that because we were an extremist organisation. Sorry.
Yeah.
That, and then you have YouTube. We had between 400,000 and 500,000 on our app. We fed the app with a video from YouTube, and YouTube would show that as 1. So all this stuff, and it's not just, you don't have to go in there and set fire to the operators or to the scientists or whatever. What you do is you destroy the scenery around that particular entity, and then all of a sudden, and fair enough too, people see that, they only have 6 people watching, or they haven't released anything, and that because of the university censoring them or things, and all of a sudden the reputation can be tarnished.
Yeah, what's really, just to pick you up on that little point, what's interesting is from the academic perspective, there's a whole body of knowledge and a whole area of research where they are looking at those social media metrics and making assumptions based on that data, not realizing that it's completely contrived, and manipulated. And, I peer reviewed an article recently that was talking about kids interacting on TikTok and where they got their education from, where their health information was coming from, for instance. And I think that the author, when I did my feedback, I think the editor of the journal was completely blown away by my feedback, because they honestly are so naive. It's frightening that these academics living in such a bubble and have absolutely no idea that a lot of them, forgive me, but their egos are so overinflated, and all that they're focused on is their brownie points in the ref, what they call the ref in the UK, or the equivalent in other countries. It's just totally out of control, and it has been for a long time, actually, Mike. There's a lot of there's an actual area of research called critical university studies, and if you put that into a university library, you'll find a whole body of literature all about the way that commercialization has taken over and completely, got rid of valid, ethical, authentic research outcomes. So it shouldn't be any surprise, but it's hidden from public view often.
Yeah, it is indeed. Tell us your definition of controlled opposition, because it's a term that's used a lot by everybody. But what actually is controlled opposition?
Difficult, isn't it? Controlled opposition. We've learned over the years. I mean, I didn't really know about propaganda theory. Again, there's a whole body of academic research about propaganda theory. The controlled opposition is a method that is used and has been used very effectively for many years. During actual military operations and other aspects of operations, filtering out certain pieces of information that they in inverted commas don't want the audience to see or to talk about or to learn more about, And so it's just a method of gathering up an audience, keeping them occupied. There's a sense in some ways of comfort. It's like a comfort blanket. Those people that are listening, for instance, to Joe Rogan, it's very comforting for them to maybe think, oh, at least the news is getting out there and it's all good, because that means that somebody else will pick up the baton and do something about these problems. It's out of my out of my little circle of control. I'll leave it for somebody else to do. And that has consequences. If people don't rise up and do something, even if it's very small thing, just talking to their next door neighbour, or not complying with, another rate rise of their council tax or whatever it is, people have got to realise that it's us inside of ourselves who we are the only people that will make a change, make a difference going forward. I know that's a cliche and it sounds awful, but it is true.
Yeah, sometimes I hear people say, we have hope, we're making progress. I have to say, in my honest, humble opinion, I think that unless we have a larger pushback, that people joined at the hip instead of being a little outpost with machine guns, governments around the world are doing exactly what they want.
Yeah.
And large institutions are doing that, such as universities, education department, all doing what they want. And yet we have in the media, look at the media, you got major networks, they're doing exactly what they want. Mm-hmm. And even though there are large numbers watching independent media, it's not concerted, it's not joined at the hip. So you become just a bigger outpost, and you eventually get rolled over or have little impact. And it's all very well getting to your own audience, but you don't need that, because why would you preach to the converted? You need to be getting to others. And that's why I think what we did, and there have been a few critics, but what we did, we and my history is working in commercial media. I've done nothing else in my life except on air and produce and stuff like that. If you don't have that concerted effort, and you have at least you're big, you really can't do much, and they're going to roll over you. And even we were big and we were rolled over. So tell me this, in your own heart, do you think we're going to do you think independent media, do you think people who recognise controlled opposition, who want a better life, do you think we're going to make any difference at the end of the day, or is government just going to roll over us? And I would really love it if you told me that I was wrong, but I doubt it.
Well, I am an optimist, as I said, and I am an educationalist. And, every day I speak to students who are seeing a little bit of the picture. And, we can't expect people to instantly see the whole dark, sorry story. And, there are lots of elements of hope. More and more people, especially in New Zealand, I know it's happening overseas, for instance, are keeping their kids away from school. They're homeschooling them. They're giving them a much better quality of life, and having faith in their own knowledge and their ability to pass it on to their kids. So things like that do bode well for the future. A little bit of knowledge is a stepping stone towards more curiosity, and it's only through curiosity that people can see that bigger picture. And some of us don't even know the half of it. It's not going to be in our generation, Mike. We expected 5 years ago for all of a sudden everything will change and people will see this catastrophe, but it's not going to be like that. It's a long journey, and we've got to pace ourselves, and we've got to keep learning and keep the faith.
I agree with you. How do you teach critical thinking?
Yes, well, I on a practical level, I give people case studies. So I'll give them, for instance, a piece of text and encourage them to read through it and decide whether they think, what kind of text it is, who the author might be, where they're coming from. And if you were going to argue the opposite to what the author argued, what resources would you look at, etc. So it's a very practical way, coupled with things like not using Google, using primary source research like Companies House and the charities registration documents, and things like that are, they're all publicly accessible. Okay, sometimes you have to pay a couple of dollars to register, etc. And it is sometimes very difficult depending on which country you're in, etc. But it's doable. Normally there are challenges that can be overcome, and the rewards are amazing because you have a sense of achievement that you have found the truth. And that's what we're always seeking. Nothing but the truth.
Tell me, how do we? I'm just looking in your country, beautiful country.
In my home country, or
in New Zealand.
Oh, okay, yeah. Because I've only been here 12 years. Remember, Mike. So I'm not a Kiwi-born.
Yes, you sound like it. But I'm not going to say any more, otherwise. Down. But in New Zealand, one of the most controlled countries in the world, and you had there were some media groups that were holding the flag up and doing the right thing. Is it still the same now? Do you have that independent media strength within New Zealand, or do you feel that there's a sort of fraying at the edges, that because everyone needs money, and so for example, I think you've mentioned there's a media organisation that has moved to a bigger building, which there's nothing wrong with that. Do you think though it's not mainstream, media itself, independent media should be, and it's very hard because sometimes the investors don't want to disclose who they are, but if you don't disclose who you are, then all sorts of activities can happen.
Yes.
And in your country, it doesn't seem to be, that the independent media beats on about everyone else being transparent. Perhaps it should also apply to them too. Tell us about your independent media landscape and those that are out there sprouting the truth, or should we also employ some critical thinking here?
Yes.
And wonder where the controlled opposition is coming from.
Exactly. Yeah. So at this point, Mike, I'd like to give a great shout out to my colleagues that were from the teachers and the nurses who were mandated out of their jobs back in the vaccine pass era, the mandates. Over the last few years, those groups in particular, along with lots of other media related groups, have evolved because, as going back to where we started, we've learned who we can trust and who we can't trust. And so the teachers, there was New Zealand Teachers Speaking Out with Science, and myself and my colleague Catherine Pick, we co-wrote the COVID inquiry submissions, which was based on some research that we did of that membership. And also the nurses group, which started Nurses for Freedom and is now called the Nurses Collective, NZ. And again, we co-wrote with Deborah Cunliffe, so shout out to those people. Fantastic, wonderful freedom fighters. And we've learned a lot over the years that there's nobody really that we can 100% trust, unfortunately. And our main independent media, without mentioning them by name, I don't think it's that they've moved to a bigger premises, but they moved to a very expensive place out of the way of the rest of the population, which said a lot to a lot of people who had been supporting them up until that point. So that was problematic, and that again, that sense of lack of transparency, where was the money coming from, these people that were having a salary, etc. It's one thing to say that you're a non-profit and that you rely on donations, and then it's another thing if that is a commercial enterprise making a profit. So Yeah, it's a very difficult situation. I totally have sympathy for you, Mike. You know, you're also in that position of trying to balance the books,
Mm.
asking for support in a difficult censorship environment. Um, I think we're still finding our feet, a lot of us, in terms of what that is looking like in the future. Because certainly the good thing is the legacy media are losing the battle, aren't they? Even our local newspapers now, they're virtually non-existent because no one's reading the government funded stuff anymore. So
It's interesting, isn't it? Because if you do away with, legacy media is not all bad. It's just that they were very naughty and they created and assisted the mayhem that surrounded COVID, and so they're guilty. But we need and that's our problem. We do need a good media outlet, and I can't see any good media outlets. The stories become a minute 40, or sometimes if it's a big story, it's 2 minutes 20. And that's not enough to get the message over. Then they'll go to a couple of commercial breaks, which will be advertising Christmas, for example, at the moment. Then they'll come back with sport, weather, and then they'll have the current affairs show, which is how someone has nicked off with someone's underwear from the Hills Hoist. I mean,
yeah,
that was not very what you would say satisfying. Then you
yeah.
have the government. You would have your government broadcaster. We have ours. The BBC is for the UK. You know that they're a propaganda arm for the government, and they are. That's who pays their bills.
Yeah, yeah.
So
I can't listen to any of that anymore, to be honest, Mike. It gets to a point where even if I'm in an environment where someone else is playing it, it grates so much because it's so obvious. It's that elephant in the room, isn't it? You just can't not see it anymore. It's
well,
just
you look at stuff, whether it's happening in the Middle East, throughout Europe, at home, whatever. You always wonder, what have they left out, or what have they added? And if you look at Donald Trump, now he may not be everyone's cup of tea, but at the same time, Donald Trump had his the editing. It was some okay editing, but it was doctored, and it was done to present that this guy was a bad loser and that he wanted a revolution and that he was responsible for January 6. And the BBC did that, and they just lied. Yet they are out there saying that you must trust us because look at your Prime Minister. Trust us because we're going to tell you the truth.
yeah,
That's a big furphy. But then you have, on the other hand, you got the alt media doing the same. Trust us, we're going to tell you the truth. What I see at the moment in alt media or independent media, there are many out there who want to be the saviours of the world. They want to be it. We want to save you. So follow us, support us. It's not about the presenter. It's about, if you're a good journo, it's about the story,
yeah,
not
yeah.
about the presenter. The
And it's
presenter.
the same, yeah, and it's the same thing as the health and education, etc. They'll wheel out the political experts, who again they're captured. They've had to toe a certain line in terms of the political ideology of that institution. And we were looking up yesterday about Richard Werner's case, in Cambridge University. It's appalling how genuine, ethical, knowledgeable people are basically forced out, and it's systematic. People with ethics in universities who, over the years, and you can see, it's written over and over again. You can see how people over the years have been forced out of academia, and what are we left with? Basically people who don't have that critical thinking skills, and they're the people that are teaching the teachers. This is the thing. As an educationalist, I'm looking at the teacher education curriculum and thinking, how on earth are we going to get out of this cycle? Because the kids in the classrooms today are being taught by indoctrinated teachers who have been taught themselves by indoctrinated lecturers and professors at universities that are captured. It's an ongoing cycle that is going to be very, very difficult to break out of. Very, very difficult.
No, I totally agree. But I feel sorry for those that require funding. I mean, we're not funded at all. We started with nothing and have most of that left, which is. But we're not funded. So those thinking that we're funded, when we were funded, we had we had very strong ethics. We were not going to change. So. We're not for profit. We're going to make money first of all to be in profit. Good luck on that one for us. But we're doing our best, and I think, and I might have been a little bit condescending to those out there in the out in the field with the weapons, little clusters. You're doing your best, but if you start bringing your own ego in it, or that you're going to save the world and you're it. You lost the plot. You should just walk away, because all that's going to follow you is a cult. And we see many of those. And there's nothing wrong with liking someone, but let's not pretend that you're there to save the world. You're there to make yourself more popular, and that's how it is. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, but at least tell everybody that's what it's all about.
Yeah, people have just got used to it, Mike. They have that income, they borrow against that income, and it just becomes a cycle, and that allows them. Well, it doesn't allow them, but they think it allows them to just blank off the reality of the difficulty that is ahead, and sacrifice their own values. And it's very sad that so many people felt forced to do that, or didn't even think about doing it, just did it, just went along with the crowd. Yeah.
Incredible. I've enjoyed this. Our other guest slept in, apparently.
That's good.
That's a bit early where he is. He slept in, so he owes us all a big drink. Look, I just want to thank you, Ursula, for your time, and for what you're doing. You're doing a magnificent job. Your writing is exceptional.
Thank you.
Although I could identify with some of the characters in some of your last writings.
Yes, I thought you might.
Thank you very much. Brought back some bad memories, let me tell you. If somebody wants to enjoy your writings, as we have, how do they do that, Ursula?
Thank you. Yes, I'm not on social media at all. So the only real place that you can see what I write in terms of journalistic stuff is on Substack at the moment, although that's looking very shaky as we go forward. But you can look me up by name, Ursula Edgington, or the name of my Substack, which is Informed Heart, which has a meaning behind it that you can learn about. So, other than that, my academic work is on academia.edu or at my website, ursulaedgington.com. And look forward to, talking more to you and sharing the information about how we can learn to keep optimistic.
Well, I am. I mean, I really love what I do. But I've done nothing else, so it's just like second nature to me. But I would like to be optimistic, but I see from everything that we've been fighting against, I see the government still doing exactly what they want. Might be a bit later down the track, but they're going to do it. And I think it says a lot about where civilization is at this particular point in time. Yeah. And maybe we can't wait for the ice age to come so we can have a few people in blocks of ice and sail out the North Pole. But that's not very positive, but it's a lot of fun. Dr. Ursula Edgington, an educationalist and writer, and just a top person. Thank you for your time. This is the big issue on the world today.
Makers are facing more traffic.
When we're on the go, it's easy to go into our own world. Keep your mind on the road.
Our beautiful world is changing, withering, dying by the hands of those who don't value nature, even though we all depend on it for life itself. But there is hope. Together with caring friends, the Nature Conservancy can restore our lands, heal our waters, and save our wildlife with big solutions only nature can provide. But every day we lose more of the places we love, and we urgently need to save endangered lands, waters, and wild species. The actions we take today will determine the tomorrow we leave to our children and grandchildren. The water they drink, the air they breathe, the beauty they experience. To learn more about how you can help protect and conserve our beautiful world, visit nature.org today.
Asthma is a growing problem, especially among children. Asthma affects the quality of life for millions like me every single day. My name is Chris Draft, and I have asthma. And I've spent more than a decade in the NFL tackling asthma on and off the field. Join me in the EPA in helping people control their asthma. Asthma is a lung condition that can be controlled through medication and by avoiding things that can make it worse. 3 steps are the solution to controlling asthma. Step 1, talk to a doctor. Step 2, make a plan. And step 3, get rid of things that can make it worse. Asthma can be tackled. For more information on asthma, log on to epa.gov/asthma.
We're today's News Talk, the world today.
And back again to the big issue on the world today, which is doing quite well, actually. Thank you so much for those calls that came in and the messages. Dr. Mark Hobart is a dear friend of TNT, The Pulse, McDonald's down the road, whatever. Mark Hobart, thanks for coming on again. Nice to see you.
Lovely to see you too, Mike. Good to see you.
You're not looking as frazzled around the edges as last time. Can you bring us up to speed on what's happening at the moment with yourself?
Okay. Well, nothing much has happened. I had a court case in June. That was the first part of my VCAT trial, which went for 3 days. But they had to adjourn it then because they ran out of time. April. So I'll have the rest of the trial in April, middle of April at VCAT. And that'll be the part where they try to prove that I'm guilty of professional misconduct and that I'm a danger to the public.
Well, you look dangerous. I mean, I'm just... but it's actually a real slur, isn't it? And the fact that it's taken so long. And I was just saying to Ursula before that if government wants to do something, it's very hard to stop them from doing it. It may take a bit longer than they anticipated, but at the end of the day, they can either make or break you. And in your case, they're trying to break you.
Yes, that's right. So there's the 4 suspended doctors. There's down to 3 suspended doctors now in Victoria. One is back to work on a conditional basis. Have gone all through the same process, being suspended way back in end of November 2021, and waiting for their court cases. And so it's taken 4.5 years in April, it'll be 4.5 years since I get my court case.
Tell us your thoughts on the aftermath of COVID, because COVID itself was terrible, but I would argue that the aftermath is even worse.
COVID was a very minor virus comparable to a flu. So I don't think COVID was terrible. The reaction of the government to COVID was terrible. The lockdowns, the brutality of the police enforcing it, the mandates, terrible. And of course the jabs, the experimental, untested jabs that were the most had the most side effects of any so-called vaccination in history.
Yeah, and it really has altered the course, I think, in many ways of mankind. Maybe not altered the course of those that designed it, because I mean, we've had Hedley Rees on, who talks about that the actual vaccine was, in fact, a repurposed drug from 2016 or even earlier than that, that had been taken off because it was extremely dangerous. And then they released it, thought beauty, here we go, we're going to make some dollars. And they did make the dollars. It destroyed families, countries, communities, cities. Do you think we'll ever come back from it?
Yeah, well, the COVID so-called pandemic and the vaccine injection program, etc., it's part of a bigger thing. We lost a lot of our liberties during that, and we haven't got them back. And now we're on the brink of digital ID and stuff like that. So I think we have to put it in the context of it's a global, first of all, it's a global conspiracy. Might as well call it conspiracy because it happened globally. And so it has to be global players conspiring together to do exactly the same thing at the same time. And they all had the same program. Nothing's happened. Everyone's keeping quiet. The main players have left. They're not there anymore. Gone to greener pastures or just out of the picture completely. And there's no one that'll answer any questions. You get the odd person coming up, like the Deputy Commonwealth Director of Health, Nicholas Coatsworth, who in I think it was April this year said that we became aware that the COVID injections did not prevent transmission and they caused myocarditis. And this was in the context of the mandates. And he says that was unethical, and the mandates should have been stopped then. He said unethical. That's Nick Coatsworth, the Deputy Commonwealth Director of Health. He said that. And then I think it was in September this year, Brett Sutton made the statement in the newspaper. Brett Sutton was in control of the COVID program in Victoria. He said there was no medical basis for the lockdowns, and he wished he didn't. And he's sorry that he took on the job, and he wished he hadn't. That's what he said.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
No one's saying anything.
Which is typical of government, and they don't say anything. We can stand outside yelling out all sorts of things, but at the end of the day, it's just words, and government keeps doing what they want to do. And you mentioned the other things too. I mean, you've got digital ID coming in. You got the e-safety thing. Oh, it's going to protect the children. It's not about protecting children. If they want to watch something, they're going to watch it. I mean, when I grew up, if I wanted to, I was going to say I had a horse. No, I didn't have a horse. I'm not that old. But if I wanted to get a beer, I get one of my mates who looked like he was 18 to go and buy me a beer. You do things. I mean, you just work out how to do it. And children are going to do the same thing. But it's a very nice way, though, of monitoring who goes where and to what. And that's what it's all about. All this is just to, I mean, as the shadow minister for communications, which is the Conservatives in federal parliament, or not federal parliament, in her office in Canberra, she said government has to control internet. So if you look at COVID, people were like sheep. I mean, they trusted government. The fear of death was always an incentive to go and do something without having to, as we talked about with Ursula, critical thinking. It wasn't really applied. Then they got caught up in the sway of anybody who disagreed with the narrative. As yourself, you were ostracised, lost your gig, victimised, a whole lot. I don't see anyone apologising to you, really. And then if you look at the people doctors doctors that were giving patients injections. I'm just doing what I'm told, and these patients got very sick and many died. I don't see anybody being held accountable. So if they're not held accountable, Mark, I think that the government can do whatever it wants to do, because we have people who didn't give a rat's about the patients. What they did care about was themselves, making sure they got their paycheck. And life should be a little more than just getting a paycheck and looking forward to a new BMW. And as for the trust, the medical profession, along with other, with the media and government, it's gone out the door. So now we have this, I think, an internal chaos that no one trusts anybody, and that's not a good way for the world to be. Except if you want to rush things through, such as digital IDs, controlling the internet, making the public do exactly what they want, having a social credit score and stuff like that. They can do what they like, can't they?
Well, the only way to stop them is to change the public awareness and for the public to push back. Now, there isn't any coordinated effort in that regard. What the government are doing is very evil from a medical point of view. I'll just describe over the last over 15 years in Victoria what's happened. First of all, and I'll start with abortion. They legalised abortion in 2008 in Victoria, and at the same time they took away the right of doctors to conscientiously object to abortion. And I was caught up in that in 2013 when I had a woman who wanted an abortion of her 19-and-a-half-week-old baby girl, which I refused. And this led me to be investigated by APRA, and they ended up cautioning me because I said I wouldn't follow the law, which I wouldn't. But they just cautioned me. And since then, we have had the euthanasia laws brought in, which was in 2017. Okay, euthanasia, one can say that that's a person's right, but it should be that there's a right for the doctor to not be involved in that. However, that's changed now with the advent of new euthanasia laws coming up in Victoria, which may come in December, where they are going to take away the right of doctors to object to providing euthanasia information to a patient who requests euthanasia.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, so you've got the situation where a patient will come up to the doctor and say, "Hey, doc, I want to kill myself. Can you tell me how to do it? My specialist says I'm going to die of cancer in 12 months' time." They want to bring that in too. Not 6 months now, but 12 months. How anyone knows, can tell anyone else that they're going to die in the next 12 months? Well, that's you need a crystal ball for that one. And but the doctor can't say, "Look, you're going about this the wrong way. What do you want to die for? Why? You're not in pain." Obviously, they're not in pain. They're thinking of the future, fear of death. Rather than giving support for this, they're told to give them information about how to take poison so they can kill themselves if they want to. This is totally medicine. It's against the moral order. It's assisted suicide, basically, and it's in the Crimes Act. But they don't call it assisted suicide. They call it assisted death, voluntary assisted death. It's exactly the same as voluntary assisted suicide. But they can't call it assisted suicide because it's in the Crimes Act. There's a 5-year jail term. And this also ties in to what happened in COVID with forced jabs, forced injections of an experimental, untested, and subsequently proven dangerous. Actually, they knew it was dangerous before the mandates. They knew it was dangerous before the middle of 2021. They knew that, and they persevered with it.
Absolutely
it's
true.
unbelievable. So we have a government that does this to people. So the judiciary's on board.
Yep.
The
I think
judiciary's on board. The politicians are on board. Most of them. It's hopeless. So the only way to counter this is through the people. They have to be made aware, and that's where I'm left with now.
Very frustrating, and I do agree. I think as we're watching the disassembling of the West, and I think the disassembling of Christianity and the whole lot, and I think we are upside down, and I don't know where we're going to go from that. But if somebody wants to, do you have socials, Mark, at all?
I'm an ex, Dr. Mark Hobart. Excuse me, bit of hay fever. Dr. Mark Hobart on X. I think it's at real Dr. Mark Hobart on X. I post things not that often, just relevant to my case. You can follow me on that. I keep in contact with like-minded doctors who generally have to stay under the radar. Well, they all have to stay under the radar.
They do.
In fact, all doctors, if you're a, put it this way, if you're a Christian doctor, you have to stay under the radar or they'll suspend you. If you're against abortion, euthanasia, or COVID injections, you'll get suspended. And transgender too. You can't practice medicine.
You've got to stop. We've run out of time. And we must actually, I'd like to get you on again. I'd like to get your thoughts on the, and Jen will get back to you very quickly, talk about the CDC. The Mark Butler's so excited. The rabbit, he looks like a rabbit, thinks like one too. Anyway, the CDC, of course, that won't be corrupt. And of course, we have all the trans issues, and we have all sorts of things out there. I see us following in China in a great way. And you being in Victoria, one day you're an Australian state, and if your premier has her way, you'll be part of China. I mean, you'll be next door in virtually next door to Taiwan. I mean, how fantastic! It's very scary indeed. Mark Hobart, thank you so much for your time. We'll do this again very shortly. Okay, this has been our first up of our new show called The Big Issue. This is The World Today.